About a month ago, I uncovered a truth that turned my whole world upside down. My wife, well, my soon-to-be ex-wife, Jessica, finally admitted that both of the kids I've spent years raising aren't actually mine. Let me tell you, that day felt like I'd been struck by lightning. I'd had my suspicions for a while, maybe for years, but I kept shoving them down deep because I wanted to believe in the family I thought we had. Turns out Jessica had been unfaithful, having affairs behind my back, and the men she cheated with are the real fathers of those children. Even now, the shock hasn't fully worn off. I still remember the day my son, Austin, was born 6 years ago. I was in the delivery room at Fairview Community Hospital, a small place in the heart of our little town. The staff there were all smiles, offering us warm congratulations, and I felt like my life had finally become the picture-perfect dream, a loving wife, a newborn baby in my arms, and a bright future ahead of us. Back then, Jessica and I had been married just over a year. We met in college, taking the same economics class, and she had this laugh that could light up a room. I fell in love with her energy, her ambition. She wanted to be an event planner, and I thought we were two peas in a pod. When Austin came along, I remember whispering to Jessica, "We're a real family now." I couldn't stop beaming as I showed him off to my parents. We took what felt like 1,000 photos, and I emailed them to everyone I knew, bragging about my beautiful baby boy. Everyone said Austin looked so sweet wrapped in that little blue blanket, with his tiny fists clenched like he was ready to take on the world. In those early moments, I didn't have a single doubt in my mind that he was my flesh and blood. I mean, I was right there for the pregnancy appointments, the ultrasound pictures, never questioned a thing. But as Austin got older, I started noticing little details that unsettled me. His hair color was way off from either mine or Jessica's. I tried to rationalize it, thinking maybe genetics are just random sometimes. Even so, when he turned 2 or 3, I'd catch myself looking in the mirror, then looking at him, and feeling this odd disconnect. He didn't have my crooked smile or my dimpled chin, traits that run in my family going back generations. The difference became more pronounced each year. People would sometimes tease, "He must really take after his mom," and I'd laugh it off, but inside, a tiny voice kept telling me something wasn't right. It didn't help that Jessica started acting strangely around the same time. She'd get phone calls late at night, and I'd ask, "Who's calling, hon?" She'd say it was a coworker or a friend, but then she'd go to another room and lock the door to talk. When she went out, her explanations for where she'd been never quite added up. One evening, she said she was heading to the supermarket, but she came back 4 hours later without a single grocery bag. When I pressed her, she'd just say, "There was a sale at another store," and I lost track of time. Little incidents like that cropped up a lot. Sometimes her clothes smelled faintly of cologne I didn't recognize, or she'd come home from work dinners, with her hair disheveled and her lipstick smeared. I didn't want to be the suspicious type, so I kept brushing it off. Over time, we'd argue about it. I'd say, "Jessica, something's not adding up here," and she'd get defensive, tear up, or accuse me of not trusting her. Once, she screamed at me, "If you don't believe me, maybe we shouldn't be together." In hindsight, that was a pretty big red flag. But I loved her, or at least I loved the woman I thought she was, and I didn't want our marriage to fall apart. And of course, there was Austin. I wanted him to grow up in a stable home, with a mom and dad who stuck together through thick and thin. I'd take him to the park and push him on the swings, telling myself, this is what being a real dad is all about. As the years went on, though, Jessica's stories kept getting more elaborate. She claimed she was traveling for work conferences, but whenever I offered to come with her, she insisted it wouldn't be appropriate. She also never wanted me meeting her colleagues. One day, a mutual friend mentioned that Jessica had been caught openly flirting with another friend's husband at a 4th of July barbecue. I remember feeling a pit in my stomach when I heard that, but I was determined to stand by her, to make our marriage work. I thought maybe I was just insecure, or maybe I was taking gossip too seriously. Then, last year, Jessica announced she was pregnant again. Part of me was excited, thinking maybe this was our fresh start, a second child to love and care for. Another part of me was terrified. What if my suspicions about Austin were true? For months, I wrestled with that thought, but I kept quiet. I told myself that if this new baby arrived and looked more like me, maybe all my worries would go away. But the moment Jessica gave birth to our daughter, Emily, I felt like the rug had been pulled out from under me. It was plain as day that Emily was biracial, and I'm not. My mind reeled. It wasn't just that she didn't look like me, there was zero possibility she could be my biological child. My heart sank right there in the hospital room, amid all the congratulatory balloons and pink baby blankets. Jessica tried to avoid eye contact with me, and that spoke volumes. I couldn't sign the birth certificate. I just couldn't force my hand to write a name that felt like a lie. Deep down, I knew the truth. But I needed concrete proof, so I ordered DNA tests for both Emily and Austin. While we waited for the results, Jessica barely looked me in the eye. It was a tense time, days felt like weeks. When the envelope finally arrived, I sat in my truck outside the post office, tearing it open. My hands were trembling so badly, I could hardly read the words. 0% chance of paternity for both children. That moment was like watching my entire life, my marriage, my sense of self, crumble into dust. I drove straight to a lawyer's office. I remember walking in, clutching the papers, my face white as a sheet. I told them I wanted a divorce. My lawyer, a calm older man named Mr. Walker, asked, "Are you sure about this, son?" I just showed him the DNA results, and he nodded, a sad look in his eyes. He explained the process of filing for divorce and disestablishing paternity, and we got the ball rolling right away. Part of me was numb, just going through the motions. Another part of me felt a rage building in my chest that I'd never known before. That afternoon, I went home, gathered my clothes into a couple of suitcases, and told Jessica I was through. She didn't yell or beg at first, she just stood there, silent, holding Emily in her arms. It was like she knew there was no digging out of this hole anymore. But when Austin came home from kindergarten and saw me packing, he got scared, crying that he didn't want his daddy to leave. Jessica tried to use that moment to guilt-trip me, saying, "Look what you're doing to our son." And yeah, it tore me up inside. But what else could I do? My whole family life was based on a lie, and I couldn't live like that anymore. Ever since I walked out that door, people have been calling me everything from heartless to a downright monster. Jessica's been pulling every trick in the book to manipulate me into coming back, mainly using Austin as her weapon of choice. She has him call me late at night, sobbing and saying he misses me. On social media, she paints me as some kind of villain who abandoned his own child. It's amazing how many folks have chimed in, telling me I'm an awful person. My siblings, who live out of state, heard the story through the family grapevine and told me they think I'm punishing Austin for Jessica's mistakes. The way they see it, I was Austin's dad for 6 years, so I should just ignore the DNA and stick around for him. But here's what they don't understand, I do know it's not Austin's fault. He's completely innocent in all this. It breaks my heart to imagine him growing up, wondering why his dad isn't there anymore. Yet, there's another side of this that people aren't seeing. How am I supposed to keep living under the same roof, pretending everything's normal, when every glance at that boy now reminds me of Jessica's betrayal? Maybe some folks can bury that kind of hurt, but I'm not one of them. I just end up resentful of him, resentful of Jessica, and even resentful of myself for staying. That's no way for a kid to grow up. It's not right to fake a family if all the trust and honesty are gone. I tried explaining this to my siblings, but they only see the kid's pain, not mine. My parents, on the other hand, support me. They've seen the toll this has taken on me, how I barely sleep, how I've lost weight and seem like a shell of myself. They worry about me, but they respect that I can't keep up the charade any longer. Every day, I wake up feeling a mixture of anger, sadness, and a kind of relief that I'm no longer living in that web of lies. It's a strange mixture of emotions. Folks online and around town have been asking me the same questions, so let me just address them here. Did I tell Austin why I was leaving? Yes, I did. I sat him down, even though he's just a young kid, and I tried to explain in the simplest terms, I'm not your real dad, buddy. Your mom wasn't honest with me. I also told him that none of this was his fault and that I'll always remember the good times we had. He cried, and so did I. It was one of the hardest conversations I've ever had in my life. But I felt like he deserved some kind of truth, even if he's too young to fully grasp it. Do I really care about him, or am I just looking for an excuse to walk away? Believe me, I cared about that boy with all my heart. I was the one teaching him how to throw a baseball and telling him silly bedtime stories every night. But the amount of anger I feel toward Jessica right now overshadows everything else. It's like trying to see through a hurricane of emotions, it's all swirling around so violently, I can't catch my breath. Am I paying child support or alimony? No. My lawyer says we can legally disestablish paternity in my state since I have irrefutable proof I'm not the father and have the test results to back it up. Jessica can't force me to pay for children that aren't mine, especially given the circumstances of fraud. Every state has different laws, but here, we're able to move forward with that. Should I stay in Austin's life anyway? Some folks say, he only knows you as dad, so you owe it to him. But those people don't understand the strain this betrayal has put on me. Jessica's selfishness dragged 2 children into her lives, and I'm just as much a victim in this as they are, though in a very different way. The difference is, I'm an adult, and I've got to make choices that keep me sane. If I forced myself to keep playing dad, I'd be lying to both Austin and myself. It'd just lead to more bitterness down the road. Honestly, I don't hate those kids, I feel terrible for them. Emily is just a newborn, completely unaware of all this drama, and Austin is old enough to feel the pain of me leaving. But every time I picture Austin, I see how my life was turned inside out for 6 years, how I was lied to and manipulated. That's not something I can just push aside. My head is still spinning from it all. Now, I've been pretty blunt about Jessica, calling her names I won't repeat here. Yes, I know it's harsh, but at this point, I'm dealing with raw anger that I've never experienced before. I'm not out to label all women or start some hateful crusade, this is strictly between Jessica and me. She betrayed my trust in the worst way I can imagine. Letting out my anger on the internet might not be the healthiest coping mechanism, but it's helped me keep my head above water. I won't apologize for feeling what I feel, especially when I'm in the throes of a personal crisis. The silver lining, if there is one, is that a handful of people, complete strangers in some cases, have reached out with supportive words. They've told me they understand how I feel, that they've been through similar heartbreak, or that they respect my decision. Those small acts of kindness have given me hope that someday, I might come out the other side of this mess in one piece. It's a strange comfort, reading messages from folks who get it, even if they're just a username on a screen. Right now, I'm staying in a modest apartment across town. My parents have come by a few times, bringing me home-cooked meals and making sure I'm not completely isolating myself. I can't focus much on my job, to be honest. I work as a mechanic at the local auto shop, and the guys there have noticed I'm not my usual self. Sometimes I stare at an engine and just zone out, remembering the life I thought was mine. I catch myself thinking about the old days, back when I proposed to Jessica in a little diner near campus. I saved up what little money I had for a ring, and I was so sure we'd be together forever. Now, I'm in the middle of the darkest period I've ever known. I can't sleep most nights, even when I close my eyes, I see flashes of the past, Austin's first birthday party, where I dressed up like a clown to make him laugh, Jessica's fake smile, telling me, I love you, while hiding her phone from my view, the day we brought Emily home from the hospital, and how the nurse looked at me with pity because she could sense my confusion. It's a swirl of memories that leaves me exhausted. I've started therapy to sort through all these emotions. My therapist said it might help to write things down, so here I am, sharing my story and pouring it all out. Maybe someone else reading this will feel less alone in their own troubles, or maybe it'll just help me see things more clearly. I'm not sure. What I do know is that I can't keep silent anymore, pretending this pain doesn't exist. I'm aware that walking away from Austin means I'll never see him grow up. I'll miss his first day of middle school, his first girlfriend, or his big sports games if he decides to keep playing soccer. That realization hurts me deeply, and it might always hurt. But the alternative, sticking around and pretending everything's fine, isn't an option. As far as I'm concerned, there's no future in a house built on deception. I've seen a lot of comments from people saying, man up and put the child first. But they forget I'm a person, too, with a limit to how much I can take. If I forced myself to stay, I'd be living with constant reminders of Jessica's affairs, those nights she snuck around, those cold lies she told me. And that rage would simmer under the surface, poisoning everything around me, including any relationship I might try to maintain with Austin. It's like a wound that won't heal if I keep reopening it. Some folks have suggested I channel my anger into something constructive, like volunteering or focusing on my work. I'm trying, but it's not easy. Every day is a battle between the heartbreak of losing the family I thought I had and the relief of no longer being lied to. It's a complicated mix that's tough to put into words. Sometimes I feel guilty, sometimes I feel numb, and sometimes I'm so furious I can't think straight. The only thing that's clear to me is that I need a clean break, at least for now. I'm not here to portray Jessica as a one-dimensional villain either. There's a part of me that still remembers how kind she could be in the early days, how she'd surprise me with homemade cookies after a long shift at the shop, or how she'd hug me so tight I felt safe. But those memories are overshadowed by her ultimate betrayal. I can't reconcile the Jessica I fell in love with and the one who lied to me for years. Maybe she's got her own issues or reasons, but they don't justify what she did. As for the kids, I do hope they grow up happy and find the support they need, whether it's from their biological fathers or other family members. I'm not heartless, I'm just done being taken for a fool. If that makes people judge me, so be it. I've reached a point where I have to prioritize my own mental well-being over the opinions of folks who can't fathom the devastation I'm feeling. So, this is my final word on the matter, at least for now. I want to extend a genuine thank you to anyone who's reached out with empathy, whether it's a neighbor I run into at the gas station or a stranger on the internet who dropped me a supportive message. You've shown me I'm not entirely alone in this. For the ones who are outraged at my choice, calling me names or accusing me of abandoning an innocent child, I understand your viewpoint. Maybe if I were an outsider, I'd feel the same way. But it's real easy to pass judgment when you're not the one who got sucker punched by betrayal. In time, I pray this raging storm inside me will calm down, and maybe I'll find some peace in the aftermath. Right now, all I can do is wake up each day, keep going to work, and try to figure out who I am apart from the lies I lived with for so long. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that no matter how dark a situation might seem, there's always a glimmer of hope somewhere out there. And maybe, just maybe, by walking away, I'm giving myself a chance to heal and start over, on my own terms. Thank you for listening to the story until the end. Share your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next video, I concluded, reflecting on the journey that had brought me here. The narrative, once a personal ordeal, had evolved into a broader message of caution, resilience, and the enduring quest for integrity in the face of betrayal.